Here's a story about how I spent $430 on dust collection and almost didn't get it right. So about a year ago, I was watching basically all the same videos someone would watch if they typed in dust collection into the YouTube, and the algorithm did its thing and just started spitting out a bunch of wonderful stuff for you to watch. I feel like every woodworking YouTuber has a dust collection video. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic videos, but those videos say a lot of things, and everyone has an opinion, just like I have my own opinion. Watching all those videos, I came to a conclusion. The conclusion was, since at the time I was a hobbyist learning, that I was going to go ahead and get by with the bare minimum. That minimum being 2 shop vacs and a dust deputy. The 2 shop vacs, one was supposed to, with the dust deputy attached, was for all of my tools, all of them except for the CNC, and then the other shop vac was specifically for my CNC. Now, there's some inherent problems with the system that I had. First off, as you can see here, it does nothing for my table saw. Table saws just spitting sawdust everywhere. Also, I found out that it doesn't really do anything for my planer. My planer, instead of it going through the dust collection, which from what I understand, the DeWalt that I have, the dust collection isn't the best, but the shavings are just spitting out the front, and I find myself having to air it out in the middle of batching out milling large amounts of wood. And honestly, when it all comes down to it, there's just too much sawdust. Last week, I decided, let me start taking the time to write down how often I spend actually emptying out the buckets, cleaning out the inside of the filters of my shop vacs, sweeping what didn't get anywhere on the floor. And so I started tallying the time that I started and ended, and I found out that I was spending 3 hours a week cleaning dust off my floor.
It's not gonna work.
All right, so when it came to the dust collector I picked, I have experience with Grizzly. There was a bunch of them for sale in my area, but they were all either 220 volts or 3 horsepower or just way too much space. I decided against the wall mount, pick up the same space when it's all said and done, and this one's got wheels on it. So now I can at least move it if I have to put it in a tricky spot where I needed to get to later. Now, this is not going to be a review because I haven't had a chance to use it at all. Putting together a dust collector with the instructions is fairly simple, so I'm not going to go through the deep process of that. However, what I am going to do is just give you a few tips that I have learned during the process. One, read the instructions all the way through. As a man, that's very difficult for me, but with tools, I started to do that, especially with the couple mishaps I had putting my saw stop together. We'll just leave it at that. Number 2, I always keep extra these. Like, this came with a set of something that I don't have anymore, but I keep these so then I can take all the bits, like the screws, the nuts, the bolts, the whole 9 yards, and I make sure that they're in here because, 1, I've already dropped them once, and 2, I can count them and make sure they're all there, and 3, sometimes when I start something, I'm not able to finish it for a while, so then I know where everything's at, it's packed away, I don't need to worry about it. And the last thing with your dust collection and when you're putting it together is just take your time. They're not that difficult, but if you do mess a mistake or you go out of order and you just get into it, then you'll have to take it all apart and redo it again. All right, so got it put together. Took me about 45 minutes, but that's with me taking my time. And I double checked to make sure that it worked.
3 days later.
All right, so it's a couple days later, and you'll see a picture here. I have sold my old dust collection, so
Goodbye, old friend.
I was able to use that money to help me offset the cost of my new dust collection, and that's the stuff that I'm bringing in right now. Okay, so step number 1 before I do anything else is to lay out my hoses and determine exactly where I'm going to put them. Do I want to go high? Do I want to go low? And also just to make sure that I have enough hoses. I'm also at the same time going to determine which machines I want to keep hooked up all the time and which ones I don't mind switching from one machine to another. Now, ideally, I'd have every machine hooked up at all times for less work. And if I had a big shop like my dad had, that's the way he had his set up. However, for me, because I have such a small shop and things like my planer and soon to be my jointer is going to be on wheels, so I can move it to the center of the shop where I have made a bigger space so I can use longer boards, which is where my work has been going, then I don't mind switching it from one to another, because the way I do my workflow is it's going to go straight from one machine to the other machine. I don't do them at the same time. Now, when it comes to the type of ducting I decided to use, I went with one that's going to give me the most flexibility, the least cost per flexibility. And I know that there is some downside to this. They say that you lose suction over distances or if there's more than one machine running at one time. For me, since I am one person in a very small shop, the loss of suction over the distance does not bother me, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. Got this at Amazon, and the link is in the description. The other thing, since I know there's only a couple machines that I want to have hooked up at all times, which is my table saw, because unhooking that up would be a pain, and my drum sander, because that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to upgrade. I've been unable to use my drum sander because the dust just builds up and then it either trips the breaker or it stops completely. So all I need to do is start off with one of these. Now, apparently I did not get a coupler, so I have a couple different options. One, I can go get a little small piece of PVC 4-inch on here and put it on there. And that's what I'm going to end up doing tomorrow. So what we're going to do in the meantime is we're going to go ahead and lay out our ducting so I can make sure that I have enough of it and that I have it where I want it to go. Now, my ducting for the 2.5-inch, which is going to be everything but those two machines that I want hooked up at all times, is going to go up over the top and it's going to come down right there. Now, what can I say? Janky is as janky does. Now, let's go ahead and get that up. So, change of plans. First, putting it in the ceiling did not work because when I hung it down, it actually got in the way of my table saw. So if I had anything reaching over on this side, so the left side of the table saw, it would bump into it. Makes no sense. That's why I plan everything out before I do it, because sometimes I don't think. Now, here's the problem. If I put it on the floor, then I have to step over it when I walk into the shop. So I have a couple different options. One, I can go up against the wall, up high, and leave it there. Or two, I can move the dust collection. The problem is I don't have another place for the dust collection to go without putting a countertop or tool that I use more frequently into a corner that I can't access. So I'm going to work on that. But the good news is when I was digging around up there, my hoarding paid off because look, 4-inch PVC pipe. So now I can finish this tonight. So let's talk cost. Now, when it came to the dust collector, I tried to buy used. In my area, it got to the point where I was sending out offers to people on ones that were too big for what I needed, but I just had to stay within my budget. The one single phase 110 dust collector that was for sale was the exact same as that one, and you'll see it here in a second. And they were asking a price that was way above brand new, even shipped to your house, because little secret, if you put something in your cart, and it's not a secret, but if you put something in your cart and you wait about 24 hours, they will send you a coupon. So by the time I did that, it cost me about $230. I told them I'd give them used, pick it up the next day for $180. They now have the price down to $200 after they told me to go buy a new one. So if I round up, my dust collection was a total of $430. Brand new dust collector and brand new stuff. Now, if you're able to find someone who's actually selling the dust collector at a decent price, you should be able to get the exact same dust collector for about $150 if it's relatively new. If it's older, less, but dust collectors pretty much maintain the value fairly well. So what we're going to do now is hook up our 4-inch hose. These twist clamps I got from Amazon. They were recommended by Lincoln Street Woodworks, and the company is called Fulton. Make sure, because I've already done this twice because I'm trying to record. So I put the hose on. I'm like, wait, the clamp's not on there. So make sure the clamp is on the hose before you put the hose on there. Then we're going to put our two 10-foot long, 4-inch diameter hoses, one here and one on the bottom, and they're going to go to the two machines that I need hooked up right away. And now rinse and repeat. So apparently, in all my brilliance, I forgot to get a reducer from 4 to 2.5. So what I'm gonna have to do is basically put one of my blast gates over it so I could use it in the meantime, because I have a project due, and then I'll have to order one from Amazon and I'll get it in a couple days. Now, these are one of the things that everyone said not to get, the plastic blast gates. I know that there's a lot of good ones out there. Other makers make some. There's really two reasons why I got these. One, I was already up against my budget. I was gonna keep my Cyclone and my dust deputy and my shop vac, but I needed it to kind of offset the cost. And two, because I plan on actually making my own, and I just want something in the meantime. So we're gonna take a little bit of a cutoff from that 4-inch pipe. We're gonna do the same thing with the tape, and then we're gonna put tape on this, and then we're gonna cut it off until I get the piece, because the main thing I need connected for this table I'm working on is the table saw and the drum sander. So I was just checking to see what the suction was like. I don't think I'm going to need to put blast gates on there, but I have some. So if I feel it's affecting and I want to add those clanky dust gates on there, I will. The reason why I'm not doing it right away is because ultimately I do feel like, especially when I finally get the jointer that I have my eye on, that I'm going to have to actually put PVC and run it through the ceiling. Unflattering ankle cam. All right, so it turns out that I probably should have got a 20-footer for this. So there will be just a tiny bit of hose on my floor, but this isn't a high traffic area, so it will work for now, and it will allow me to work on the project I need to work on. So we're gonna go ahead and hook this up. Now, what dust collection is going to work best for you is really going to depend on your workflow, which is why I always say in all my videos that if you haven't started building yet, don't buy anything beyond the tools you need for your next project. In my case, my workflow is going to require that, as I mentioned, that at least my table saw is always hooked up. But when it comes to when I mill my boards, I know that I always mill my boards in steps. And the step is always jointer, planer, table saw. So I can take my dust collection from my jointer to my planer, and it will not interrupt my workflow. And the last thing I'm going to do to get my dust collection up and running and to make it easy and for my shop is I have this hanging up now, but this is, I like these. I've talked about them before. One of the things I would recommend, and one of the things that I'm going to do, is when I get it set up, my air filter is going to go off anytime I turn on my dust collector. And that air filter I picked up for $100. These I find more often available, less expensive, but there are ways to make really inexpensive ones. You could just use a box fan and two filters that, furnace filters. And there's plenty of videos about that. That's not a new idea. That's not anything that I'm bringing to the table, but I do want to let you know that is available to you. So there it is. It's been 2 years almost that I finally got some heavy duty dust collection.
That'll do, donkey.
Is it pretty? I think so. Is it high quality? For me, it is. And it's definitely all that I'm going to need in my shop for now. All right, so there's my dust collection story, warts and all. Technically still not completed, but if you follow me on Instagram, as soon as it is completed, I will post the story. What I need to do now is get my flunky to come in here and clean all this mess up. Oh yeah, I'm my flunky. Well, in the meantime, while I'm doing that, if you want to make sure that you do not have issues when it comes to space in your shop, watch this video right here.